I'll be here today from about 1:30 till 2:30. I can't stay to the end, sadly. But if you have any questions, you can feel free to drop me a message. I'm also going to pop in our registration form, which if you haven't done yet, don't worry, you can do it after the session. It's just a quick 5-minute form. Not even that, actually, about 2-minute form. We just need the participants. But yeah, I'll leave it over.
Yes, welcome everyone to today's session. It's our first one in this year's series of Southwark Climate Collective training. So we're going to be talking about food waste, reducing food waste, the issues around it, and a bit of legislation, not in too much detail, but just a little bit to give a bit of context to it, and then go through some sort of top tips and examples, case studies on how to reduce food waste that may be useful, particularly for SMEs in the hospitality, food and drink industries. That would be the main focus of this today. So a little introduction about us. I work for Temple, as does my colleague Maya. We're now part of the Ramble team. We've been a sort of independent environmental consultancy for a while, looking at all kinds of environmental and sustainability issues with some big ecology and planning teams as well. So we've worked on a lot of complex projects, but we're now part of Ramble, which is a large sort of global architecture engineering consultancy company. So our aim is to help deliver a sustainable future. There's a few examples of the projects that we've worked on. So we've worked on a lot of infrastructure projects, but also smaller waste-related projects as well. So from looking at the Lower Thames Crossing, East-West Rail, Crossrail, River Thames schemes, things like that, looking at the sort of environmental impact assessment of those. We've also delivered a sustainability and waste strategy for the Barking Riverside development, done operational waste management strategies, written waste assessments and other strategies for businesses and developments. We conducted a waste audit of TfL's head office, identifying ways for them to reduce waste, and we also worked with organisations like the Environment Agency and RAP, who are the Waste and Resources Action Programme, and we also delivered some similar sessions to this last year for Better Bankside. So here's a little link, the events that are upcoming really in this series. These are the ones that are coming delivered by us. You can see today, obviously, we've got food waste, we've got a session on procurement coming up as well, and carbon accounting, and a bit more on the carbon side of things later on. So please, do sign up for these. There's a link there on how to get involved and register for these. And Sam, as he says, also put the form into the chat. But please do sign up and come along. Temple are working as a technical partner here with Southwark Climate Collective and Better Bankside to try and deliver these sessions and help people sort of understand a bit more around these issues, and particularly the carbon and climate elements of them. So a little bit about me. My name's Stephen. I've worked for Temple for a long time now, since 2011. Across a lot of projects and areas. So I was a national carbon specialist for the Environment Agency for a couple of years. One of my focuses at Temple is also working on the waste side of things, so developing those waste management strategies and assessments, and those projects that we talked about as well. My colleague Maya is also here to help us. So if you want to a little bit about yourself, Maya.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. So yeah, hello, I'm Maya. I'm a senior consultant in carbon and climate team here at Temple, or shall I say Rumble. And this is the part of the business that supports organizations to address the climate emergency through strategic and technical focus support. I, in particular, provide support in carbon accounting and production of carbon reduction plan, as well as the production of waste chapters for EAA purposes. So today I will be supporting Steve in running interactive activities for the session and responding to any questions that you might have. So off to you, Stephen.
Thanks, Maya. So yeah, we wanted to try and understand a little bit about people who's attending the call and yeah, what you're hoping to get out of it, really. So got a Menti poll there.
Yeah.
So I think Maya's just going to
I will share
take
it.
control. And
Exactly.
yeah, if people who are attending are able to go to that website on another sort of browser page or on their phone or whatever it may be, there's a code that you'll be able to put in. We'll put it into the chat as well, Maya. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Just share it with you. So you can access this voting app with your phone, and we do encourage you to use your phone. It's possible to access it also with a computer, but it's easier this way. So just go over to menti.com. You should be able to see a code on this page. Trying to present, but it's a bit slow. Apologies for that. Here, you see a code. If you just go to menti.com and type in this code, you'll be able to see it. And the first questions we have for you is which sector do you work in? We would really like you to be represented in this session. So you can type in the app what interests you are coming from, what kind of business is yours. So we'll just have a couple of seconds to have everyone type in. And how we'll use this information is just by using as many examples throughout this presentation, trying to cover different types of businesses mentioned by yourselves. So if you just add the code and you're good to go, you can answer the question. I hope it is straightforward. If anyone has any issues, feel free to let me know.
Thanks. Well, I think yeah, so quite low on attendees. So if people are able to
Event. Okay, we have someone from the event industry. A fellow from environmental consultancy. That's good. Great. Okay. Okay, so yes, like mentioned, we'll try to customize our examples to quote them during your presentation, anything relevant to your industry's transporting to events. That's good to know. Excellent. So a bit of a range here of different businesses. We have another question for you now. We would like you to know why did you sign up for this session? What is it that you would like to learn? What is it that you would find the most useful to understand today? Again, if you could type in the same code, we would be able to see it here on the screen. I'll give you a couple of more seconds to think about it. Reducing office waste, yeah. This is what is the main idea here. We will definitely talk about that today. And and I think this is the main one. So that pretty much covers this part. If Steve, you would like to continue with the presentation.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll try and pop back into ours. So
yeah, I've stopped sharing.
Okay. Pop back into mine now. So I know it's yeah, we have mainly tailored this. We're kind of looking at the food and drink and hospitality industry will, as we go through, we'll try and, I guess, tailor it a bit more towards that events side of things if we can. Maybe if we can get some input from the attendees, if you've got some specific examples later on, we'll on what the sort of specific issues you have are and what you've tried. We can try and shape that a bit more. But I'm going to run through the presentation really as it is. What we're going to do is just sort of give a bit of an overview of food waste, facts, the issues surrounding it in this country, and what the kind of legislation is, what you're required to do in dealing with food waste at the moment, and then we want to try and get an understanding what issues you face, and what solutions you might have tried, whether they are successful or not. We're then going to talk a little bit about the benefits of food waste reduction, obviously why people are here, what benefits you can achieve, and then we'll look at some good practice tips across a few different areas for reducing food waste and how to realise those benefits really. So we're going to talk about those tips for a bit, talk about food waste strategies and how to manage food waste through business, and how to take action, what that can look like, what it means, and what kind of initiatives and case studies there are of people who've done this successfully, or options that you can use. But we'll have another session later on, kind of looking at strategies and setting some actions and using a scenario kind of to apply what we've discussed so far. And at the end there'll be a slide with lots of resources, some links that you can use when you go away from this session, and we'll try and circulate that as well. So food waste, what's the issue really? I mean, one of the shocking statistics is that a third of all food produced globally is thrown away, and within UK, about 9.5 million tonnes of food waste is created every year. That's the most of any country in Europe. Just to put that into context, that's enough food to feed 30 million people for a year, and it's got a value of about £14 billion. So it is a big issue, a big problem in the country, and something that's trying to be addressed by government and various organisations. So WRAP, who are the Waste and Resources Action Programme, are an NGO working on this. They estimate about 70% of that waste comes from households, with about 12% from the hospitality and food services industry. Now, one of the other shocking statistics is of that 9.5 million tonnes, about 2/3 of that was edible food that was thrown away and wasted. Now, that food waste also has a knock-on impact for the environment. That waste generates around 25 million tonnes of greenhouse gas emissions each year. So that's about 6.5% of the UK's overall emissions. So as we can see, it is a big problem, something that needs to be addressed. And WRAP have targeted a 50% reduction in food waste in the UK by 2030. So that's only 5 years away. But the government wants to use legislation to reduce the amount of food that is going to waste. And there's several action programs in place to try and support that. So we'll discuss some of them later on. So in terms of legislation, what is out there? I mean, in terms of a statutory definition, there isn't a singular one, but some regulations, such as that separation of waste from 2024, it's biodegradable material resulting from the processing or preparation of food and drink. So that's anything that's generated when you're preparing food, from food and vegetable peelings to spoiled or uneaten food. So key thing to note there is that it covers both edible and inedible items, such as those that are listed there. And really, you can see this branding here, which is from earlier this year, when the simpler recycling legislation that we're going to talk about came into effect. And we'll talk about that sort of context in a second, but it's important to know that it's not just food waste that's covered under this simpler recycling law. It's a selection of different waste streams, as you can see there. So it means that people need to arrange the separate collection of that food waste, glass, metal, plastic, paper, and card. So it's dealing with food waste is just part of a waste management recycling system that you need to have in place in your business. But the legislation doesn't mean you need to have one bin for each of those items. They, if you produce a lot of one of those materials as a business, then you may want to segregate it entirely. But the government says that for most businesses, there'll be 4 or 3 containers. So you definitely need to have a separate one for food waste, a separate one for your non-recyclable, and then you can either separate your paper and card and your plastic, metal, and glass. Usually that'll be a case as if you produce a lot of paper and card, such as in an office, or if you get a lot of packaging, card-based packaging, you may want to segregate it and arrange for a separate recycling. But really, with 4 bins being the optimum, you can do it with 3 bins, and I think that is the approach within Southwark. Their council do collect waste from businesses, and the 3 that they collect are food waste, mixed recyclables, and general waste. So really, you need those 3 bins as a minimum, and you need to arrange your collection of those three separately, whether it's through the council or whether it's through another waste management company. And another important concept really in waste legislation and management is that waste is the waste hierarchy. So this is a piece of guidance that ranks waste management options according to what is better for the environment, giving top priority to preventing waste in the first place. So that's the main thing we'll be talking about today, is obviously preventing that food waste from happening. But then when waste is created, if you're not able to prevent it, then the top priority is to prepare it for reuse. So if we look at examples for food waste, in preventing, we'll talk about reducing overordering, using leftovers for other meals, reducing prices, things like that. And in terms of reuse, that's when we can consider looking at food redistribution. So charities, food banks, similar for human consumption. And then if that's not possible, then it can be used for sort of animal feed, but there's various sort of requirements around that, which means it's only really applies to sort of industrial food production. And then once you've exhausted those options and moved down to the next level, recycling is the next one. Obviously composting on site if there is room and the need for it on site, or usually these are then the options that your waste management company will be exploring. So off-site composting or anaerobic digestion, and further down that hierarchy there's incineration with energy recovery, before the very bottom, the last resort being either landfill or incinerating without energy recovery. So it is a legal requirement. The organisations who produce waste apply this waste hierarchy to their waste, and applies to all waste, as you can see, food waste and all other types of waste. In terms of Southwark, we talked about it briefly. Southwark can collect business food waste through their waste contract. So they do a three bin collection, so business waste, or business food waste rather, and dry mixed recyclings, and then general non-recyclable. Generally it's on a weekly basis, but it depends on the service that's provided and the contract that you have. But you may want to look around and find another waste handler depending on what's best for you as a business. In terms of Southwark, they provide a 240 litre wheelie bin for food waste, and they can collect all those items on the right. So pretty much anything that is likely to be produced in terms of food waste. So the legislation itself, there's plenty out there on waste, recycling and food waste in particular. So as companies who work within this, you're probably aware of most of them, but we've just highlighted some of the key recent pieces of legislation that have made changes to how companies have to handle their waste. So these stem from the Environment Act of 2021, and that set out what was needed from businesses, and then, as we saw, is put into action by the simpler recycling legislation on the 31st of March this year. So that meant from that date, any businesses with more than 10 employees have to separate their waste streams, as we discussed, so including food waste within that, and arrange for its collection. So failure to comply with that can result in enforcement action, penalties, or possibly prosecution. So it also gave or allowed members of the public and regulatory bodies to report people or report businesses that weren't compliant. It's also just important to note that businesses are still legally responsible for their waste once it leaves their premises. So it's essentially use a fully licensed waste carrier to collect your waste and retain the waste transfer notes and things like that. We'll cover that a little bit now, I think. So just a real brief run through of what businesses need to do to set up what they're doing in terms of recycling and management of general waste, but also specifically food waste. It could be you're a new business in the area, or just to use this as a reminder of the steps involved, what's required. So as you know, businesses, they don't automatically have a waste collector like homes do, but most councils, as we discussed, offer commercial services like Southwark do, but you may want to, or you may prefer to set up a contract with a private waste company. But it is really important that you choose one that is authorised to collect and handle your waste. So they need to have a waste carrier's licence, and that just indicates that they are legally allowed to collect and transport waste. It's issued by the Environment Agency, and you should be able to request that from them. It's a minimum requirement that they have that. And you need to just check they're registered on the Environment Agency or the DEFRA website. So that's, just reinforcing that it is the responsibility of the business to select an authorised waste carrier. So there can be penalties if you use somebody who's unauthorised. So once you've then obtained those documents and you get them to provide you with waste transfer notice as you do, just a reminder that it is part of the business's duty of care that you must prevent your waste from being deposited, treated, or disposed of in an unauthorised or harmful way. Move on from that because we've covered these already. In terms of food waste, what happens to it once it's been collected? I mean, the aim is to treat it in some more environmentally beneficial ways. Those would be either anaerobic digestion or this is still a goal that's being worked towards, and a lot of food waste is still currently going for incineration, and some still going to landfill. I mean, within London itself, the majority of food waste, about 56%, goes to incineration, with anaerobic digestion only responsible for about 17% of treatment, composting down at 7%, while nearly 8% goes to landfill at the moment. So the Mayor of London's aim is that 60% of the waste will go to anaerobic digestion by 2030. So again, that's only 5 years away. And then 20% will be composted, with 10% incinerated and 10% dealt with in other ways, recycled, and zero food waste going to landfill by 2026, which is slightly ahead of the UK's target of stopping all food waste going to landfill by 2028. And the reason is that obviously it produces greenhouse gas emissions, not from the breakdown of the material. Anaerobic digestion is the best option because it captures that methane and some CO2 that's produced and allows it to be reused to generate electricity, replacing fossil gas, and also produces a digestate that can be used as a fertilizer for food growth as well. So I know we are down on numbers, but we're going to ask sort of issues or concerns people have with food waste or solutions that they might have tried. I mean, we can put it on the Menti, or I think we can put it in the chat as well. I think because we're lower numbers, it may not be as effective, but
yeah. Well, if it's easier to put it in chat, please do, or you can use the Menti as well in the same way as earlier. So this is just a poll to ask you about your issues do you usually experience with food waste. I'm just going to give you a couple of seconds to think about it, and to know that this is a multiple choice question, so you can pick more than one answer if that's applicable to you. Yeah, I'm going to give you a few more seconds to have a think if any of these apply. So it might be that the biggest issue you're facing is the high disposal costs, which is very common. The fact that the products expire before they're sold, that there is a limited storage space for unsold food, or maybe a lack of time or staff capacity to manage food waste. So for you, the products expire before they are sold. It's good that you mentioned that we have an activity specifically designed around this issue a couple of minutes later. So we're going to talk in more depth about it later. If there are any other issues that you're facing, please just let us know. And I have another question for you. We're wondering if you've already tried to implement any of the solutions to prevent that from happening. Maybe thinking about better stock management or ordering practices, discounting for nearly expired products, which might be one of the solutions. Any of these, if these apply, feel free to let us know. If this is not the solutions that you've trialed already, that's okay. I can end up this Menti. We can move on with the presentation. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll carry on with it then. Yeah, I've had some comments there as well about how to increase the circularity of food waste, working with the waste carrier. We've partnered with the food waste collection service. We've got one office and the carrier services the entire building. So yeah, that would be I guess a common issue with shared services like that. Okay, we'll bear that in mind as we get through to the next few slides. But when we come to the end, we'll talk about those specifically and try and see if there's some solutions or something we can help and talk through. So yeah, in terms of the benefits of food waste reduction, there's many of them. I mean, for SMEs, for hospitality companies, one of the main ones will be saving money. I mean, by ordering and using ingredients more efficiently, you can reduce unnecessary purchases, generate higher profit margins on your food, and can also reduce your disposal costs by cutting the waste that needs to be collected, which would be the food itself plus any of the sort of packaging that's associated with it. And it's estimated a 240 litre wheelie bin filled with food waste costs around £240 That's just for the food purchase and waste disposal. So if you're filling one of those a week, that's costing you more than £12,500 a year. And then on top of that, there's the cost of preparing and cooking the food, paying the staff and dealing with the packaging, all that. That adds up. So by reducing that waste, you start to see the savings add up instead. You can also benefit from better stock management, because monitoring your waste and where it comes from really highlights where over ordering, poor storage or overproduction does happen. It can help you streamline operations such as in your kitchen and improving your menus. But one of the obviously key ones for us coming from a climate and carbon perspective is you reduce the greenhouse gas emissions associated with the food, whether that's from the decomposition of the waste itself, but also primarily from the embedded emissions that are within it. Those were the emissions that happen during the production and transport of the food, whether that's from fuel for tractors and lorries or from processing and materials used in cooking, treating, producing, packaging food, delivering it to you. All those emissions happen whether the food is used or thrown away. So by reducing food waste, you reduce the amount of embedded greenhouse gases that are just put straight into the bin. In terms of marketing, reputation, having a zero waste or low waste approach can be a strong selling point. It can allow you to differentiate yourself from competitors, because customers are increasingly valuing eco-friendly businesses, and reducing waste signals that you're responsible and can attract customers like that who may be more likely then to leave positive reviews. Obviously, by dealing with your food waste in certain ways, it can extend to supporting the local community. So by contributing that food to, or unsold food that's going out of date, to local charities or food banks, that can really sort of strengthen community ties and also form part of your marketing if you wish. And as we heard at the beginning, 1/3 of food produced globally is thrown away. So by reducing that amount, it reduces the pressure on food production, allows more food that's being produced to be eaten and used as intended rather than being wasted. So that is important, but it'll become increasingly important as global population rises and as climate change affects the ability to produce food. So these tips and sort of guidance section we're going to go through now is mainly focused on the hospitality, food and drink industry, where the people working with that are more like they will have a better understanding of ordering and menu planning for their business than we do. This section is ready to go through quite a few actions under different topics that may have helped from other businesses or that we have seen demonstrate good results. There may be some that people have tried or not, but really it's to go through a whole list of tips, and hopefully that some will be of use to people that they can take on board and use within their business. As it's part of the Climate Collective series, we'll kind of talk a little about the carbon impact as we go. But if you want more information on that side or anything, then please get in touch. Really, I mean, it's about applying your knowledge of your company, your business, and which foods spoil less or are wasted, and using that to kind of plan your menus and your ordering, checking the stock, purchasing only what you need. It's tips there sort of around buying smaller portions of produce more often. That's a bit of a balancing act, because obviously more frequent deliveries generate more emissions and can contribute to congestion. So that's really something that you can explore if your supplier can give you some zero emission deliveries, whether they're walk deliveries or by cargo bike or any other sort of low or zero emission delivery. But lots of these tips on here are linked. I mean, we talk about try not to overorder, but if you have surplus ingredients, using them in specials and soups or as garnishes, that sort of links with your menu planning. And yeah, the lower impact foods we talk about, again, that's looking for local foods. It's not always the case that local foods are better for the environment, but it is, in the vast majority of cases, that is true. And particularly you need to look for what is in season at the moment. So seasonal produce is sort of locally produced, is most likely to be lower impact and to last longer as well. But obviously within London, it's very difficult to get very locally sourced. I think 99% of food is imported, but that is, you know, an important thing to consider when you're looking. It's encouraged within the mayor's food strategy. So as we said, the key is to kind of look for what is local, what is in season, and then part of that is engaging with your suppliers and talking to them about minimising that, the distance the food has to travel, or what is in season that they might be able to provide to you. So again, linking with the other ones and ordering, that storage and spoilage tips of storing newer items at the back to make sure older items are used up first, improving the stock rotations if there's a build-up of certain foods or ingredients, moving them around to, so that they can be used more readily. These are all sort of things that companies will be using, but maybe some things can be revisited to try and help reduce that spoilage that happens. Maybe using inventory checklists where, as the ingredients come in, they get labelled and dated straight away, and then having airtight, reusable containers to keep ingredients fresh, or to freeze them if they're starting to go sort of beyond the useful date. And again, menu planning, we discussed it a little bit, in terms of using surplus materials or surplus ingredients rather to create specials or soups of the day, things like that. Obviously, they're all things that are done readily, but you could also review the menu, have a look at which dishes are maybe less popular, or if you're able to establish which dishes particularly create more waste, either through the preparation or when they're consumed. Can you change them a little bit? Can you tweak parts of the dish or parts of your menu to make them sort of less wasteful? So using the same ingredients. Plate waste is obviously a large source of food waste. So portion sizing is a key part of that. 48% of people, when asked why they sort of left food on their plate, portion size was the reason. So can you look at offering smaller portions, reduce portion sizes as a standard, or on certain dishes with, you know, if there's a potential impact of that, you could look at offering refills of certain sides or offering to swap sides out. Things like that can just help maybe balance what waste is being generated and trying to reduce it. So those sort of tips, things are around the prevention side of things. I'll talk a little bit more about sort of strategies and specific actions that can be set later on. But once you've exhausted what you can do to prevent food waste in the first place, the next step is that reuse. So food redistribution. That's the process of diverting surplus food that's edible from food businesses to the organisations and charities that can distribute them to people in need. So as you can see, there's plenty of benefits to that and very, very few downsides. It's about reducing food waste, combating poverty in the local communities. There are sort of regulations and requirements on labelling and storage and everything with this food that needs to go to be redistributed, but there's plenty of guidance available on that online. We've got some links in the resources page later on, or if you go through the RAP website or other sources, they give lots of guidance around what needs to be, how things need to be labelled, or what to do for this, for redistribution. And there are lots and lots of organisations out there. We've listed a few on the right there, from Fair Share, City Harvest, all those organisations redistribute food, particularly within cities, and there's platforms that can be used as well. We'll talk about Olio later on as one of the case studies, but there's a number of different platforms that you can either sign up for and use to sort of redistribute your food. You can sign in and register exactly what you have available, and they will come and collect it. But yeah, it's something that can be really useful for dealing with that food waste and for benefiting people. So when we come to food waste strategies, we want to talk a little bit about what they were. And lots of organisations, particularly in food industries, will have one of these, but they may not. It's a structured plan to measure, manage, and reduce food waste. So it covers everything from when you purchase and order your food through to preparing it and disposing of it. So it's kind of gives you a framework to set out targets, clear goals and actions on how to reduce your waste and how to monitor it as well. So like I said, you may have one of these, or you may be looking to create one. I'll just go through some of the stages in setting the actions that can help you realise these strategies, or the goals from the strategy rather. So within a food waste strategy, you'll usually then set a food waste reduction target for your business. So that has to be realistic and achievable, and you need to understand how you'll measure it and understand when you've made it. So something you could use would be the industry target of 50% reduction by 2030, and a good idea is to add milestones on the way, maybe annually, and see how you can sort of reach that target in the end. I've got a link there for guardiansofgrub.com. That's a really useful resource for any businesses that want to reduce their food waste that are within the food and drink and hospitality industry. They've got lots of resources, saving calculators, templates that you can use. So if you want to take action on this, set a target, and you need the support to do that, you can start there. Obviously we can help as well if you need to, but there's lots of useful resources there. So measuring is really key. You can't really manage anything that you can't measure. So one of the tips is to measure your food waste daily. So by weighing that food waste, completing food waste diaries, there'll be a template for a food waste diary that you can use in a few slides' time. But the key is to make that the sort of system for doing it robust, accurate, manageable. It's got to become part of the routine. And part of that is thinking about the space that you have available and having containers for waste at each different stage of your process. So the example there is to have 3 bins, one for spoiled food around your storage area, and then other bins in your preparation area, and then separate bins for your plate waste. And that will enable you to gather data. They'll tell you where the food waste is occurring and in what quantities. So you have bins set up these key locations, and then it needs to become part of the routine that waste gets weighed daily and then recorded so that you can gather enough data to take action. So just doing it for a couple of weeks and gathering all that data on waste and location of the waste before you take action, because you may have a feeling about certain types of waste, but if you've got the data there to use, that's going to be much more useful for you in setting targets and actions. So yeah, once you've had the target and or rather a high level target, and you've measured and collected your data, then's the time to act. So have a good look at the data and see where you're wasting the most food and why. The important part of it is to discuss it with the team, people who are dealing with the food in storage, people who are preparing it, and waiting staff as well. Discuss what they feel, why they think waste is occurring, and create a list of simple solutions that they come up with. And then really the case is to go through those and whittle them down, choose the ones that tackle where the worst food waste is occurring, trial them over time, have a look at how that affects the data. So it's not a case that people will be able to just pluck an action at once and it'll just work immediately. It's important to try different solutions and see what happens with the data. So trial a few of these solutions in different areas, continue to measure the data regularly, and then you should be able to see which ones have the biggest impact. And then those that are reducing food waste in the biggest way, you can then write that into your standard procedures and make sure that the staff are trained on how these actions should be undertaken, and then you can repeat the process, and that should give you a good framework for progressing towards your target, whether that's the annual milestones or your overall target. By kind of undertaking these actions, measuring the data, repeating it, coming up with solutions, you can quite quickly see the effect it has. So I mentioned, a couple of things there, the Guardians of Grub website and the food waste diary or tracking sheet. So this image here is of the sheet that is available from the Guardians of Grub website. So it just gives you a kind of a way of measuring your daily food waste and where it occurs. So yeah, if you want, I'll put the link again in the resources at the end, but this is just a useful tool to record the waste data over several weeks, see where most of it comes from, and then continue using these sheets as you're implementing the actions and see what changes, see what has the most impact. There are several food waste initiatives out there. Love Food, Hate Waste is one that's sort of a global brand, which is mainly aimed at households, but also applies to consumers and customers as well. And there's several ways you can try and incentivize waste reduction. There's lots of I guess examples on their websites and other ones of things like offering discounts or loyalty points for customers who bring their own reusable containers, whether that's for drinks or for leftovers, or people who actively participate in waste reduction. Promoting the use of doggy bags so customers can take away their unfinished food. And another one there that we've talked about was portion sizes. So part of that, along with providing that as an option on your menu, is also to educate your customers and your staff about why you're doing it, and giving something clear about the descriptions of the portion sizes on the menu so that staff and customers can make informed choices, and avoid over ordering, but also a concern that a lot of companies have is that the customers are going to be against this because they feel like they've been shortchanged, but it's not often the case, particularly if you do focus on that education and being clear about what's going on. Promoting your commitment to food waste to customers, but also to staff, and training them, because they're essential to delivering the reductions you want to see, and also in promoting it properly with customers. So all aspects of that should be covered, from portion control, stock rotation, and all of your sort of actions that you're taking. As discussed already, there's Guardians of Grub, that's produced by RAP, the NGO. And yeah, this is all built around the industry target of a 50% reduction in food waste by 2030. So all the tools and resources they have are really framed around that for people who want to meet that target and need help to do so. It's all there, and we'll put the link again at the end. But as you can see, there's savings calculators, so you can see the potential for saving money. Lots of case studies of successes that have been achieved, and then lots of tools and forms and resources to help you. So in terms of some of the case studies, we mentioned Olio, which is a London-based business. So they they've set up I think an app and a platform that connects people, neighbours within a locality with local businesses, so that surplus food can be shared around rather than thrown away. So to use it, you take a photo of your item and you add it to the app, and people who have signed up nearby can receive an alert, browse through what's being listed and request what they want and pick it up. So it's a real focus on the reuse of food rather than it being recycled or going further down the waste hierarchy. So it connects neighbours, and it involves volunteers who also go to the shops and collect the unsold food at the end of the day to take home, add to the app and redistribute. So you don't have to just rely on snapping an individual item and one person coming in to get it. There is the opportunity to do it at a bigger scale as well if needed. According to Olio, half of all food listings are requested in under 30 minutes, and half of all non-food listings are requested in under 4 hours. So they did win an award from the United Nations as a beacon for what is possible in terms of reducing food waste and addressing the climate crisis. So you can see some of their numbers and successes there. In terms of sort of specific food waste reduction actions and successes, this of a bar and a bistro in Northern Ireland. So when the regulations came in, that meant they needed to collect food waste separately, as they have done over here as well. They measured and they realised they're producing a lot of waste on a daily basis. So they used that Guardians of Grub website and the tools that are available to sort of identify where that food waste is coming from. And one of the key issues they had found was the portion size. They had very big portions that meant a lot of plate waste, and within the food preparation they also had a lot of waste. So they've, from measuring that and realizing where it all came from, to take action, use some vegetables that had previously been getting spoiled or wasted in daily soup specials. They reduced some of their standard portion sizes. I think particularly chips was one of the main ones, and allowed customers to sort of order refills if needed. So as a result of that, they've reduced their food waste by average of 30 grams per cover, and 5p, which equates to 5p per cover of savings that they are making. We have a session here. I'm conscious we are lacking participants within this live session, but I think if we can run through the I guess the structure of it, and then we can move on to the next bit. So what do you think, Maya?
Yeah, sure. So this session was meant to give participants a chance to apply what we've been discussing today. So the aim is to create a simple food waste reduction plan using the waste hierarchy, which you can see here on the right. the goal was to just discuss the scenarios that we would work on and to suggest solutions how to prevent waste, redistribute it, recycle it, and come up with a recovery plan. And finally, to share a couple of recommendations. So I would, whoever wants to reduce waste, I would encourage them to first think about the ways to prevent the waste from originating in the first place. So thinking about better ordering, first in, first out stock systems, discounts on items close to their use dates. In a Southwark, I think you have a Southwark Council shop local campaigns, which can be used to promote discounts on items nearing expiry, for instance. Then when we think about the redistribution of waste, Steve has touched based on that, mentioning Olio Up, which is a very, very good way of redistributing surplus food. But also I would suggest one that I'm using frequently, Too Good To Go. And I would encourage businesses also to make use of that app where they can still sell their items which are close to expiry at a reduced rate. And it's a very popular app. Many people use it. I find it a very, very good solution for redistribution. Also, think about food banks, community fridges, or even giving stuff to take home, some surplus food. So these are all good solutions. When it comes to recycling and recovery, if the item can't be sold or donated, think about how you would use it. This could mean composting. Steve mentioned anaerobic digestion, reusing bread and fruit in other products. So these are just a couple of suggestions on what to do, and I would consider multiple solutions and then come up with a final plan of actionable steps which are easy to implement and something that you can do today, right away.
Well, thank you.
So yeah, sure. Sorry.
Thanks, I think, yeah, I know it's yeah, it's just it's just reiterate that, because yeah, that waste hierarchy is obviously key to all of this, and doing as much as you can at the top in terms of prevention, using all the tools and tips we've discussed so far, and setting yourself some sort of clear actions. I mean, yeah, really the next stage for anyone going through this is whether they have a food waste management strategy or not. Can they sort of take another look at it and update it based on what's here? And if they don't have one in place, maybe they could use what we've talked about and go through it and use it to apply that waste hierarchy. So as we talked about, it's about setting an overall target, working out how you can measure it, putting the bins in the right places, weighing it every day, making it part of the routine, using the data then to set yourself some actions, and then continuing to measure to make sure that they are effective. So this slide really just highlights some of the kind of key elements that a waste strategy would cover. So that first measurement of the data and the waste that's being generated, you can perform a food waste audit. That's kind of what will be done when you set out those bins and make the measurements over those first initial weeks to set your baseline really of what waste is being generated and where. And then once you start setting your goals, obviously we talk about them being SMART, that's specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So that's when you can start focusing on certain areas that you think will deliver you the sort of improvements that you want to see. So implementing certain actions, you might want to think about if there's any partners you need to work with on those and what sort of resources will be required to implement those things. And again, tracking progress, that's really key, how you measure it, and if there's any other metrics that you want to use to track the progress and how often you'll do it. obviously with food waste, it's really important to keep measuring it regularly and daily being best across all your areas. And we've talked about it a few times, but that employee engagement's really important in terms of how you engage your staff and get them sort of bought into the process. You may want to consider how you might reward them for adopting it and really promoting it and leading in what you're doing. So, as promised and as mentioned a few times, here's a fairly brief list of resources, but they're all useful ones for different areas. They cover the waste hierarchy, how to reduce food waste with support from different organisations, whether it's RAP, whether it's the UK Hospitality organisation, whether it's Read London. There's Southwark Climate Collective itself's top tips on waste. And at the bottom there, we've mentioned a few times the Guardians of Grub, that is specifically for the hospitality industry, trying to meet their target of 50% reduction by 2030. So all those are really useful, and we will hopefully share the slides or have them available so that you can use these links and access the support and resources that can help you. So really brief recap, we went through some facts and figures around food waste, the issues and legislation that cover it. Talked about the benefits of reducing food waste in a variety of different areas, and then talked about what solutions and initiatives there were available, what tips you could use or embrace to try and reduce that food waste and prevent it occurring in the first place. So we talked about food waste strategies and action planning, and there are a couple of case studies we covered as well. And then we've had that list of resources that hopefully will be something you can use in your next step in trying to reduce food waste and see the benefits that come from it. This is the point where we'd have the Q&A, but I will stop recording now. So anyway, thank you for your time. There's our contact details. I'll leave them on the screen as we finish the recording. So please get in touch if you want any further support or need some help. Thank you.